Hey, so I'm on with Mike Danson. I met Mike Danson through the Uncivilized Nation. He was actually the first interaction that I had post trial separation with my wife. He was kind of my mentor through that time. And I really loved his story. And I was just telling him before we jumped on here that I never really asked him why he got out of the Navy or the Marines. I say Navy because I'm in the Navy. But
Easy.
we're gonna go back a long time. We all know first that the Navy is the main branch and the Marines work for the Navy. How's that sit for
Starting
you?
off strong. Starting off strong. All right.
I love it. No, we a brotherhood here. So I was stationed on board a amphibious ship, and I served with Marines for majority of my career. So I have a deep respect for Marines and what they do for our nation and for the Navy and everything like that. So Mike, first let's introduce you. Tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and then I want to jump into your time in the Marine Corps.
Well, first off, thanks for having me on here. I'm excited to be here. Uh, as far as who I am, quick and dirty, is I am a Marine veteran turned personal development life coach turned youth coach, working for Man Uncivilized, originally from Michigan, Detroit area, and have been down here in Florida the last 10 years to connect with some brothers and to, enjoy paradise before I retire.
I when I first met you, I was like, man, I love the beard. Like just everything about you was vibrant. And if for those that can't see because they're listening, I'm gonna post this on YouTube and you can check out his beautiful beard as well. But when I first met you, I remember I was like, this dude has to be in the military. And then you said it, and I was like, it makes sense. It makes sense. Can you tell me, take me back to your time in the Marine Corps, why you joined the Marines, your experience in the Marine Corps, and then let's dive into the good juicy details.
All right, absolutely. So actually, it's a two prong for why I joined. So I joined in '05. Uh, I was a buddy of mine was in '04, signed up and left before he even got his diploma. Like they actually gave him his diploma in the mail because he had signed up so quickly.
Oh
He
wow.
went to Ramadi with the Marines, and so he did Ramadi, and he reached out. I was talking to him. And he was like, "Bro, you got like," he goes, "If we time this right, you'll be my boot." And I was like, "Fuck yeah!" Like I'm in, and it didn't work out that way. Long story short, so it was one to I always had like some sort of desire to the military, and the Marines were where I was going to go no matter what. And then I also had the what I don't tell a lot of people is I had the desire to. I was very suicidal back then, and so I made a rule that I wouldn't kill myself because I had two grandmothers and a mother that I couldn't bear the world with, like have someone tell them. So instead, I was like, well, I have this simple solution. I'll die a hero. No one will talk shit about a man who, goes off and dies in war. And then I don't have to worry about crushing my mom's heart in that way. So it was a two prong. Everyone else got that. I want to serve my country. I want to do this. I want to be a badass. I want to prove myself. And then on the back end, it was like, yeah, and I don't expect to come home. And so it was a very dichotomy, I guess is the best way to go with it. It's been like that ever since.
So I first want to say, well, you're here, and I'm glad you're here. And then the second piece is so with that in mind, right? We talk you're kind of the second piece of suicidal thoughts, and that's why you wanted to join the Marine Corps. How did that drive your time in the Marine Corps? So you joined. Where did you go? Did you go right to Iraq? That was in the height of the Iraq War, Afghanistan. Did you go straight there, or what did that look like for you?
So for me, it was I knew exactly where I was going the minute I got it. Like they were like, because I joined as a infantry machine gunner. So I joined as infantry, got the job as a machine gunner, and I thought the F-16 wasn't heavy enough. Why do you need knees? So I joined. I got the machine gunner MOS. I was 0331. I got to my unit and they were like, "Hey, fantastic! The boys have been home for like a month and some change. Like you're part of their warm up, and we're going right back to Iraq in I think it was like January. And oh, because I ended up getting in around '06 after all that was like boot and all that stuff. So they're like, all right, fantastic. Beginning of '07, we're going to Iraq. And then I went again in '08. Same thing. I was part of 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines, and we were actually at that time we had the highest tempo in all of the Marine Corps. The 6th Marines is general. So like 1-6, 2-6, 3-6. We were all 7-7, and they were talking about trying to do 7-14s. Our rotations were all 7-7. So it was I saw the guys that I left seat, right seat with, and like switched out, which means like switch out places with. As
Yeah.
we were leaving, there was guys coming off of the C-130 to like so we could switch places. And our senior leadership was like, "See those guys? You're going to be those guys in this many months." So before I had even left country, I knew when I was coming back. It was like,
Oh
"Hey, no
wow.
pressure. You'll be right back." It's like, "Don't worry."
You know, and it that just hearing that kind of makes me realize that why suicide was so big in the Marine Corps during that time. Um, and just like, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but just one thing that I realized about the military, and maybe you can agree or disagree, but like because you have to give, there's no real connection with yourself, right? So you don't really get to like sit down and think like, hey, what am I feeling today? And then a lot of the upper leadership is like, hey, suck it up. This is what you got to do. And many men out there and women, but many men out there ultimately take their lives because they're like, fuck this. I can't do this anymore. And this is the way out.
Yeah. And actually, you know what? I would say one thing though, from my own experience, it was idle time that used to fuck us. Like that idle time would be more dangerous to us than anything else. So like we had more problems with guys being dark, suicidal, threats to themselves, threats to others at in the barracks. When we were going, we were good. And then our second deployment, we had more access to like the internet and stuff. And I saw a darker twist with being able connected to home. Because when you're there and you're just doing your thing and stuff, there's a beauty to the simplicity of life.
Oh yeah.
And then on the back, I mean, like you're gonna see some stuff that doesn't make sense and it alters your reality. That being said, though, like you know how to suppress that and like, okay, I just need to make it through and like do this and do that, and then like and you have your brothers. So yeah, I agree. You're not with yourself because realistically, you're like, it doesn't really matter what's going on with me. I need to make sure my brothers get home. So it's just like make sure my brothers get home. Like that's like it's just repeated. Like look to your man, man's to the left or the right of you. Those are the what you need to focus on. So you're like, okay, no problem. The problem comes when you're at home and you don't have to watch for your left and right, and or they're out there, and you're like, well, who do I watch out for? And then also it's like, oh, if I watch out for myself, that means I got to go look at all those boxes of emotions I've been burying in the corners of my mind. So like that was the kicker, and then coming back and being told like, hey, snap out of it. Like what's the big deal? You were like this before. What's the big deal? Like you were this guy before, or you don't talk that way. You can't just correct someone. You can't just tell them exactly what's going on. Like I wasn't allowed to talk to certain family members for a little while because people were like, "Look, you won't. You're going to be too honest. Like you need to, don't."
I
Yeah,
think that's
they gained weight or whatever. It's like, no, you can't tell them that.
I think that's my favorite attribute of the Marine Corps. It's like you're blunt, right?
Yeah.
You're hardcore and you're blunt, and I've always liked that about the Marine Corps. It Tell me at what point you said you had the thoughts whatever came to you on like, hey, this is not what I want to do. There's something more to me. I think I'm gonna not I think I'm gonna get out and I'm gonna do something different. Like what? Tell me when that happened and the situation.
Well, it's kind of crazy because there's a little bit of like external and internal. So like yeah, there's only so long you could be treated like a child, like you're not allowed to have stuff in your room or have a 25-year-old tell you your room is dusty once a week and you get punished for it, and yet at the next minute you're in charge of three to five guys. Like there's only so long you can handle that before you start losing your own mind. That being said, though, the universe kind of stepped in because it was one of those. '08 was the end, supposedly. So '08 was kind of the end where the President Obama had just gotten elected. He was declaring victory, and he was troop downsizing as overall troop counts, period, in the nation. And so they weren't sure where they were going to send us as infantry. They weren't sure what was going on for our future. They were going to start really enforcing that 14 months, so seven deployed, 14 non-deployed, and so they also were getting rid of all the bonuses. Now my senior Marines only a month or only a year prior were being offered $90,000 tax free in country to reenlist, and then when my turn came up, they were offering me $5,000,
Oh wow.
and I was like, well, my body hurts for $5,000. And at the time, I was starting something with a girl back home. My mom missed me, my family missed me, and they weren't sure that they were going to send us to war anymore. They were talking about sending us to like do what you've seen, where like put a bunch of Marines on a boat. And I respect the Marines that go on boats. That being said, I went to war twice. Like that was not my purpose. I didn't Uniform inspections were a nightmare because I couldn't even tell you where my uniform was. It came out once a year, like uh so yeah, it was one of those. They were changing the Marine Corps for the first time in Marine Corps history. We had a commandant that had never served in the infantry. And
Oh
so
wow.
he said tattoos weren't part of our tradition. He said um he was requiring every Friday for us to wear alphas in the barracks, and like trying to transition to the '90s peacetime Marine Corps, or something of that nature. And it was just like, I have no idea what you're doing. Like, this is 100% not what I came into. So I made the decision to leave, and I had all these grand plans of starting over and creating a new world.
So let me take you back to when we first talked on why you joined the military. And one of the reasons you talked about suicidal thoughts, right? How did that improve over your course of your time in the Marine Corps, and then reevaluating that when you got out? It's like, were you better off? Were you worse off? Like, how did your time there improve that thought?
Yes. uh, so it's kind of one of those like, it was one of the first times and truly in my life that I had purpose and brotherhood. And so, although there was a lot, a lot of dark thoughts and a lot of time where like me and the bottle got real close and like real dark, and went a lot of for externals. That being said, it really solidified that whole I must be here for something. And so like the something was to make sure my brothers stayed alive. And so I just doubled down into that. Uh, I'd say while I was in, I had a purpose. So like that whole repeating, like I had that rule of like, I will not commit suicide until both my grandmothers and my mother have passed. That became like second, like that became like on the back burner. Is like, I cannot risk stepping out. Like I don't even want to say to Doc that I don't like my arm hurts, because if I'm not there and one of my brothers gets shot, that's on me. So like, you were there for your brothers. And then so
Yeah.
then as like on the way out, then it's like, shit, what do I do now without my brothers? So I would say like that actually hurt more than I was expected, was to come home and see nobody. And it was just like I had I'm talking, I've got guys that I spent my whole life being friends with. I got pictures of me holding me as a baby because my friend's older than me. And I was like, I mean, I guess it's cool hanging out with you guys and all, but man, I could use a Marine or two around here.
The mindset's different, right?
So different. And it's something to be said about being transformed and evolving by seeing things that don't make sense, like that alter your reality. Learning to respect running water, learning to respect culture, learning to respect sacrifice of self for others. the importance of others. And then coming home to the world we live in, which is very self-centered and very um, with for no fault of its own. It's just very designed that you're a lone wolf or you're an individual. Everybody's an individual. It's like not in the Marines. You're like the least individual, if anything.
Yeah. I want to ask, I want to highlight that transition piece. I mean, I'm in the middle of it. I can tell you, I got out June 6th was my last day in the Navy, and I'm still figuring it out, right? I'm still there's a lot of up and down emotions, and I know that ride the highs and just embrace the lows and just love yourself and compassion. Your time, right? That transition period from Marine Corps to civilian life. Take me through that and kind of lead me down the path of when you decided like what you wanted to do when you grow up.
Well, I've had like to make this a lot quicker. I've had like 12 or more what I'm going to do when I grow up, to the point where it's a family joke that people ask, like, "Oh, what's Mike up to now?" He's like, my dad would just pull out like a notepad, like, this time it's this. So that being said, there's been a lot of variety. As far as getting out, so I was on my way out. Um, I did what they do is like an abbreviated version of the disability claims as long as you have 45 days in. And so I was able to rush through like my disability claim work, which is amazing because at that time, that was when we were notorious for the time of like you just won't get your disability for like 6 years or something like that. Like it was the chaos time for sure. And so that being said, I was able to get that paperwork started while I was already in. The downside is I had a conversation with a doctor that I wouldn't wish on anybody. He wasn't allowed to treat me. He was just going through all my stuff and giving me all the x-rays. He's like, so he goes through all this stuff. He goes, so you have the body of like a 53-year-old man. And I'm like, well, I'm 25, so that's really unfortunate. And he's like, he goes, basically, if you want to eat, if you enjoy eating and dressing yourself, you need to stay active. Like, what? And he goes, yeah, you'll
Wow.
seize up and you won't be able to do anything. He goes, you don't have cartilage, you don't have, he goes, most of your cartilage and all your joints is gone. I already seen arthritis. I'm already seeing this. And he just went down the list. And I'm like, just stop. Don't tell me, man. Like, I'm done. Like, I don't want to know. And so that set me on my way. In lieu of that VA stuff, they sent me to a counselor, just some family readiness counselor. He said, okay, take this quiz. And I'm like, okay. He's like, he's reading me questions like, when you're driving, have you ever thought of going off the rail? And I was like, yeah, who the fuck, like, who doesn't? Like it's a big turn, and you're just like, nah, not today, and just wee off to the side, right? Apparently, that's not the answer they were looking for. So like he's going through, and they're like, have you ever had suicidal thoughts? I'm like, okay, first off, who hasn't had a suicidal thought? And he's just like, I was like, oh, you have, oh, okay. And so he's just writing. So I got voluntold into a mandatory PTSD class. It was like a 2 week intensive kind of thing, and I was the only one there without a case manager, without a pill box, and like a therapist and all that stuff. Like, needless to say, I believe she was a colonel. I'm not 100% sure how the Navy's ranks off the top of my head anymore. But she
Oh,
was
six
basically
would be a
like,
colonel.
okay, yeah. So she was basically she was a colonel. She was in charge of all mental health for the base, and she was running this program. And she's like, "How has no one ever saw you? Like, how did you slip through every crack?" And I was like, "Because docs took care of our post-deployment surveys. Like, Doc knew that he wasn't allowed to go on leave until he got those done, and we knew that Doc would be very upset with us if he couldn't go on leave with us. So like it was done as fast as possible. Like, are you broken? Fuck no. All right, cool, go. Like as you're limping in and limping out, like you're like,
that's
are you
that's
good?
Navy
Yeah,
that's
I'm
Navy
good.
Corps that's Navy Corpsman for you.
Yeah. Drink water, change your socks, face outboard. Got it. So it was one of those like that. You don't say anything because we were told that if you said something, you would be removed from duty. And again, removed from duty means your brothers don't have someone watching their back, so you don't say anything. So that transition led me to like all these people all of a sudden like hovering around me, being like, "Hey, you're not okay." Da, 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 da. I'm like, "Okay, cool. Like, I'm not okay. Sure. Okay, what are we doing about this?" And they started giving me drugs because it's the military. They'll just give you a pill for it. So they started giving me drugs. That was crazy. The starting zombie meds. That's what I call the psych meds. Is starting zombie meds. All of a sudden, it was like the roller coaster just became like a flat line. So nothing was awesome, and also nothing was also really terrible. And I was like, this is really weird feeling. Like this is how you guys. This is what normal feels like. Like okay. I mean, so it was like kind of like tone deaf a little bit to it. I got out of the Marines. I didn't have the VA set up yet. I ran out. I went through the withdrawals of taking zombie meds, and I can't speak for everyone. I will just say this: there's not a chance in this universe I will ever take a med that has a withdrawal symptoms like that. I had to have my friends take my guns from me. I had to have friends keep an eye on me. I had to withdraw myself from everyone. It was like it was very intense. So I can they were like, "Oh, cool." Like once I got that set up, they're like, "Oh, cool. Would you like to take these meds again?" I was like, "Not on your life." So since then, it's been the old-fashioned way of like instead of calming the roller coaster, I just learned to ride it, good or bad, and that's what I did. That was my transition out. The transition out was I left for the girl, I left for the mom, and I left for the exciting life. I found out the party ends when you stay home. So when you're not just visiting, the party ends. The girl and I did not make it, and of course, mom's still there. And so it's like it was definitely one of those like, and the meds and the withdrawal thing. Needless to say, coming out of the military was intense to say the least.
Yeah, no, I've heard this from many transitioning military members, and I didn't experience it to that level. A few years back, I was prescribed Zoloft. I'm not sure if that was what you were on, right? But I was prescribed Zoloft, which is a antidepressant medication, and I took it a few times, and I had like extreme suicidal thoughts, and I was a zombie. I was like out of my body. And my wife, she didn't know I was taking it at the time, right? I kept it to myself because I didn't I felt ashamed, right? And so like many men, and I'm sure you've seen this more than I have. And when I started to have those suicidal thoughts, I was like just walking like I wasn't in my body, right? And my wife, we were at a Navy exchange, um, and she said, "What's going on with you?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I'm okay." She's like, "No, what's going on with you? Like you're not yourself." And that night, I dumped all the pills down the toilet because I kept having these extreme thoughts. And so like going from that, so I want to talk about your transition from the medication and just learning how to go with the roller coaster. What have you done instead to help you go with the roller coaster? Like, has there been, like for me, what I realized was like cold immersion therapies helped me a lot. And changing up my fitness. Like I wasn't active then. So fitness, eating, sleeping, trying to sleep at least. I don't sleep much, but
Yeah.
who counts?
I will put a caveat on this. So, what I definitely want to say, I love the fact that you started this process of finding healthy alternatives as you got out to the point of like this transition. You've filled your arsenal with tools and options that you can use to make this a lot easier for you. And that ability to share that with other guys that are in this point is tremendous. I did not do that. So this is where I am now. What I use now is after 10 years of riding that roller coaster with the coping mechanisms of external validation and heavy uses of alcohol and cocaine. So for me, it was I got out, I got off the meds, I just partied. I just drank. Up north, there really wasn't anything. We just sat at we sat at bars. They brought us a bucket. The bucket went away. We got another bucket. I gained 60 plus pounds, if not more. Um, Going from lean and mean in the Marines to like just round and useless. So like I joined, I found a purpose again. I kind of bounced from purpose to purpose. I found paramedic school that was super challenging, and it was filled with a bunch of either like former service and all active firefighters. So very gung ho. This is how we're gonna do it. Da da da. Like not going through the motions school. Like you will train every single day. This is how we're gonna do it. Every day was like 10. Our classes were 10-hour days.
Oh
I
wow.
I went into that like a fish out of like a fish into water. Like it was, oh man, I excelled in that once I found that. Fast forward, my buddy, my roommate from the Marine Corps calls me up and goes, "Hey man, this is months after we got out. It's about 6 months after we got out. I got out. He's like, "Hey man, just woke up from a coma. Just want getting my bearings again. Do you want to hang out?" And I was like, I mean, yes, I definitely want to hang out, but can we go back to the first sentence? He had he had him and another buddy of ours had an accident in the mountains of North Carolina, and he was on the ropes for a little bit there. So like coming out of it, the guy from North Carolina had moved down to Florida here, and like they were living together or like living and going to school. And it turns out they were going to school to be paramedics too.
Oh
So
wow.
small world.
Yeah.
So I immediately started coming down to visit for long weekends. And then next thing I know, people are like, yo, why don't you live here? Because I would come down, I would live my absolute best life. And then I'd go back up and like, I'm in Michigan again. And so fast forward, I switched schools, moved down. And like I said, I just kept repeating that process of just riding the wave, like follow the dopamine, basically. I was in paramedic school, had a horrible call that looked like my future. An older vet was suffering alone in his apartment, and no one knew he was there because he didn't have any connections, any family, anything like that that would check on him. So quit. After that, I was done. I didn't go past that point with paramedic, and then jumped around from job to job. It was went to school to be a barber. Worked at sales jobs, worked at the bars. The bars has been an interesting thing. I worked almost 9 years in Florida in the bars because I mean you might as well work where you're at all the time anyway.
Yeah.
So it helped some great connections and some great skills. That being said, it just continued the conditioning of like in a good mood, drink. In a bad mood, drink more. Like you'll get there one way or the other. So now the tools and stuff that I use and how I was able to talk with you and relate, it took those 10 years of just actually, yeah, so even more than that now. It took all of those years of doing things that short-term gain, like short-term numbed, long-term destroyed, to realize like that's not, I can't go forward. I never planned to make it this to 30, let alone to 35 now. So the fact that like at 30, it kind of hit me as like, hey, you need to figure something else out.
Yeah. That's a lot. And I just want to say thank you for opening up on that. With
Mhm.
that 10 years that you were kind of going with the roller coaster and things of that nature, at the end of it, when jumping from job to job to job, when did you find Man Uncivilized? When did you start to feel like, hey, you know what, maybe I'm starting to align with my purpose a little bit more? And take me down that path with your time with Man Uncivilized and what you're building.
Hmm. All right. Well, so actually, it started more traditional. Of I realized that the bar world was not going to be for me forever. I didn't enjoy it as far as working and all that stuff. So I went back to what I knew as a kid, and I was a welder in high school. And so I actually I could have had a union job right out of high school. I chose the Marines instead because it's like you could always go back to the welding. And so I did. I finally agreed with my younger self, and I went back to welding. I went to school for it, thanks to the VA helping me out with that. And I got in the union. And so then I had the job. Then COVID happened. So October of 2019, I finally stopped working in the bars full time, started working welding jobs, day jobs, that kind of thing. And then the universe decided it was going to help me out. And I, I have empathy for everyone that COVID messed with. That being said, COVID literally saved my life. So, like the disease itself, not so much, just the culture shift of taking all the vices away. So I started a job that was full time with overtime and had a purpose, and we were building something. And then all of a sudden, every thing that I would normally self sabotage with, which is like going out to dinner, going with friends, going out to drinks, those drinks turn into shots, and then shots turn into like 6 a.m., calling off work in the past. All of a sudden, all the bars were gone. All of a sudden, all the restaurants were gone. All of a sudden, going to see my friends working, none of them had jobs anymore. So it was like, I stayed in my little bubble with my union guys, and we just worked. And so like the one time where I was the most vulnerable of changing my pattern, everything was removed from me. And in lieu of that, that gave me a year to actually like realize, one, how much money I was spending on alcohol and food and garbage food, like all this life. And so like that changed everything, which allowed me to buy a house. From there, I had the job, I had the house, and yet still couldn't hold a relationship. So that's when it started. That's when it turned into, okay, so I'm broken. Let's fix this, because everyone's told me I have PTSD. You watch a TV show, and you know the vet is always like that twingy guy with the green jacket on, waiting to shoot everybody. So it's like, okay, like obviously I'm broken. Let's figure this out. I finally agreed to go to PTSD therapy through the VA, and at the same time, I found Mark Grove's teaching relationship stuff, because I was like, obviously, I suck at relationships. So he's like, yeah, you don't suck. You just don't know what what you're doing. No one ever taught you communication. No one taught you to love yourself. So if you don't know how to love yourself, how can you accept love? And so started learning from him, and then fell down the rabbit hole of like amazing after another podcasts and men's coaches and men's groups of like the Samurai Brotherhood, Rising, Rising Man, the Connor Eaton's mastermind back then, and all that stuff. Like listening to the creators from start to finish through their podcasts, and just hearing the kind of guys they were. And each one of them had one thing in common: they all brought Traver on, and each one has their own part, and that's why I love so much about men's work. Is it's there's someone out there that will connect to you, guaranteed. And each guy had something that appealed to me. That just not that whole fuck yes moment until I heard Traver, and he was just like, "Hey, I'm blue collar," and you know what I mean? Like it was very like, he was like, "Yeah, emotions are weird, and yet they are now my superpower." And I was like, "Huh." So it was very easy to relate to someone who's both been violent and peaceful. They, can at one time run a business, and the next time like will throw his phone in anger because it's not doing what he wants. You know what I mean? Having that relatability to him created like an opening. So I joined Man Uncivilized, and oh man, it was exactly what I was looking for. I used to compete. For those who don't know, there's a guy who's amazing in the nation who comments on everything. He's really active. His name's Bob Z. I used to try and compete when I first came in to be faster than Bob Z or comment as often as Bob Z.
I love Bob.
Yeah. So I made a lot of friends that way, just by just trying to be on there, because I was so incredibly amazed at like personal development work. It was like finding out that I had a whole nother part of me that I never had that I didn't even know I've been suppressing for so long.
Yeah, that's what I love about this work, especially with everybody, all the men's coaches and speakers out there. It's all the same message pretty much. It's just delivered in a different way. And like you said, Traver, he just resonated with me too. Like I was first on Sacred Sons listening to their podcast and stuff, and then Traver came on. And I was like, dude, that's where I need to go. And as soon as I, like you, as soon as I signed up and everything like that, I just it stuck. So with that, right, you found Traver and his movement, and you believed in it, and Bob Z was your maybe he didn't know this, but he was your competitive drive, right, of being that involvement. I'm being funny here, but um
Yeah.
at what point did you say, hey, you know what, I want to be in this organization and I want to make a difference, I want to make that change?
Mm. So I basically thought about that almost immediately. Like I just want I wanted this to be my life. It for the first time in my life, because now I had done the Union, I had been in the Marines, I'd have been on teams, I'd have been in bar families, which, if you don't know, bar families trauma bond in ways that's like hard to describe outside of the military, or like I'm assuming I've never done, but I'm assuming like like a gang would do or something like that. Like, there's something serious. Like, you go through some hard stuff together, you definitely come out stronger. Although the coping mechanisms and all the other choices were rough, this one was, for the first time ever, it was that same bond where like you knew you could trust these guys. I was talking to guys like every day, and like I knew I could trust these guys with anything. And when I was like, I unloaded, or I had like a problem, it wasn't, oh bro, just go drink it off. Like, oh, here, come, we'll do some lines. Or, oh hey, like, just, oh, that sucks, that relationship ended. Well, let's get some girls and, let's figure this out. And it's like, so for the first time ever, it was like, well, have you tried sensory deprivation? Have you tried breath work? Have you tried plant medicine? Have you tried this? Like, have you just sat down with a journal and wrote what you feel? And it was one of those, it came at a perfect time of, I was doing the PTSD therapy at the same time, which was extremely excruciating and useful. And so then between that, yoga and the men's work, it was like, okay, this is it. Like, this is what brings me joy. Like, I'd rather do this every single day for free than continue to work jobs that just pay the bills. And I reached out, because I still need to pay the bills. I reached out to the nation and I was like, guys, like, can I be Traver's secretary or assistant or answer phones, or I don't know, man, something. And they were like, well, no. We do actually have, at that time there was some amazing guys doing that already. And they were like, all right, well, however, Nate could use some help with the initiation. I'm brand new still too. I felt like it. And so it was just like, they're like, yeah, you just got to hold space. Like, that's really what's going on here. And that, saying yes to that without even thinking, like, not questioning or nothing. I was just like, yes. Like, we didn't even need to told you what the job is. Like, don't care. Yes. Uh, that led to this friendship that I have now with
That's the Marine
Nate.
Corps mindset.
Yeah. It's better to make the wrong decision at 100 miles an hour than to hesitate and not make a decision.
Absolutely. I'm
Uh,
just giving you a hard time, man. That
yeah.
it's good though that you said yes, because look how it's evolved. Like, and I see that from a third, like I see this from an outsider, and just how much influence that I consistently see. And I say value, right? Because when I'm in there, you provide so much value to men that are in need, just like myself, right? But go ahead and continue. I didn't mean to make a light joke in a fun in a serious moment.
No, no, you were absolutely right. I mean, actually, part of this inner work is realizing that something that works great for combat isn't actually, like, before we started recording, we actually talked about that. I've been forced to slow down by myself and by the universe multiple times lately, to the point where I was even in a veteran program, and they were like, "Have you ever heard the term less is more?" And I'm like, keeps coming up a lot lately. I just actually got injured. We were talking about that. I just got injured physically not too long ago. And it was like, everyone was like, are you okay? And my first thought was, damn, I'm gonna have to stop my two-a-days. two to 1 to 2 hours of yoga and then running every morning and going to the gym. And they're like, that's what you're concerned about right now? I'm like, yeah, shucks, you know? So yeah, it's definitely been it was great to just say yes. It's great to like have that mentality of like, if it feels good, don't even allow the brain involved. Like if the instincts line up, go. And then there is something to be said of like meeting an amazing man like Dewey, who said I could really help. This is paraphrasing. He said I could help a lot more if I learned to ground. And so learning to slow down, learning to ground, and learning to take that breath and know where my feet are, know where that little ball of energy inside me is, and like actually pushing that into the ground, being stable, and just being able to hold that container. It's sure amassing knowledge and amassing experience, and yet that means absolutely nothing when you give advice to those who don't want to hear it. So there's something much more unique and much more needed right now in this world is to just be like, look, man, I know a shit ton, and I've actually I felt a lot in this world. That just means my reserves are deeper, so I can hear you better. It's not so I can tell you what your next step is. It means I can hear you better.
Tell me, right? Because many men, and I'm a firm believer of this, like a lot of men are like the lone wolf mindset. Tell me how your life has changed since you've joined a group of men that are like-minded, that are pushing you to be the best version of yourself, that are holding you accountable, that are making you face the shit that you never wanted to face before.
Well, I mean, I can honestly say one thing about that. Memorial Day last year, so 2021, I ran. I knew used to normally do 3 miles. I did 6 miles that day because I was something didn't feel right. Something was boiling over. Um, I just couldn't get it out. And I did some yoga that day, a class, and while I was on that mat, I finally figured out that I still held survivor's guilt. Um, some of the amazing men that didn't come home with me. And then I had promised myself to die a hero. I promised 17-year-old me that I would die a hero. I wouldn't make it to 30. All of that just all came rushing through that weekend. And I forgave myself. I forgave myself for having survivor's guilt. I actually, for the first time since I can remember, and so I mean like 13 up, I have reasons to live. I no longer keep that rule for suicidal thoughts of I can't commit suicide till these three people have passed. It's now that's not an option. So for the first time in my life that I can remember, I have reasons to live, not reasons not to die. And so that I attribute to my hard work and more importantly to the support of the men in my life who've allowed me that opportunity to dive in that deep, knowing that I have that circle, knowing the guys that help me push to try the new things, join the groups, do the masterminds, do the courses, hold me accountable. So if I didn't have this brotherhood and I didn't have this trust and this feeling of connection, I cannot say 100%. I'm willing to bet if I'm a betting man, I'm willing to bet I would not be where I am today. The old story would still hold you.
That's powerful, man. And I once again I thank you for what you're doing in the nation, because there are men out there that need that, right? And the space that you hold, and just to listen to your journey and how you have grown with other men in your life, right? Makes me want to ask you more about why you chose to start a program in the nation, or man uncivilized for those that are not familiar with the term, a teen program. To talk to me about the teen program that you are working on, that you're growing. It's exciting time, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's my baby, man. I'm so excited about it. So my purpose, so circling back to like talking with Traver and stuff like that, his big thing is what are you building? What's your purpose? Playing around with that and being called and really challenged, like, hey, what's your purpose? And before I could overthink it, before I could destroy it, I was like, I want to work with the teens. And that's actually evolved through my whole life. I volunteer, I actively walk forward, and I actively have been putting myself in positions to volunteer and be there for those who are younger. My mentality is I felt super isolated, even though I was surrounded by people. I felt super isolated as a child, as a teenager and stuff. The thought of telling those who loved me and those who were around me what I was actually feeling and getting the negative rebuff from that, or being even more isolated or shunned for those feelings, it wasn't worth the gamble. So I made my own plans to escape or do this or do that. So the idea of being someone who could be there for that version of me now, there's no greater quest. So my purpose now is to create a path for boys to become brothers so that they can together change the world of men. So instead of waiting for, I make this joke a lot. So instead of waiting for your third DUI, second divorce, and being like, oh, shucks, maybe it's me, I want to go after the 13 to 18-year-olds and say, guys, I'm not going to give you a religion. I'm not going to give you this. No, I'm going to hold space and let you flush out your moral code. And while you're doing this with brothers. This is not a one-on-one thing. So there's going to be other teens on there. So you find out very quickly that although your story has very specific and it hits home directly to you, you are feeling something that the other boys are. And we're going to talk about what that is, how that feels, so you can put words to it, language to it, label it, and know that you're not alone with those feelings. And I've been saying it on Instagram like crazy, and it's weird to hear it parroted back to me. It's that you are not alone and you are loved. And so that reminder that you can bring me anything. Let's go deep. I have been in those ditches. I know that hole. And I know the way out. So, and I know the way out that works for me. So I'll help you find the one that works for you. So that's that opportunity to go back and help those younger men and say, look, this is what I needed. So this is what I will do.
You know, that's crazy that you say that. Like you explain it in depth in the sense of like I was witnessing a few months back, you know, like this teenager just by himself at the park. Obviously those that know, I'm a traveling RV full-time family, right? So I'm not in one spot at one time. And I didn't listen, like I didn't get the guy's name, I didn't ask questions, but I just listened to him talk. And he just kept saying that he's lonely and that he didn't feel like, and he was telling, I'm assuming another friend, right? Because they were just talking, and he's like, hey, why are you down? Like, what's going on? Like, you're just swinging by yourself. You look pissed off. Like, why are you down? And I'm sitting here acting like I'm pushing I'm pushing my kids, acting like I'm not listening. And he says, I just don't feel like I have anybody to talk to. And it hit me. And then I went back to my own childhood, and I'm like, fuck, and so like just hearing that, I think about what type of change that this program is going to make in the world. And that, like I talk with Robert Wunderlich often, when I was in the initiation a couple months back, we talked about how do we initiate young men into, or boys into young men, right? There's no like initiation process. So I think I really believe in what you're building here. For those that are curious, I'm in a campground and it's like really loud. So I know, Mike, I saw you look back, like what's that here? Like what's that hearing? But for those that you know, this rings a bell. You have a teenager, you have a young boy. Like I encourage you to reach out to Mike. I encourage you to ask how you can be that better parent, that better space holder, that whatever you're looking for, reach out to Mike, right? And that goes into my next question. Is this something that's coming soon? Like what is the timeline that we're looking and I don't want to rush you if there's no timeline. I'm just asking, what's that timeline look like for you?
So we had a timeline, and so we're actually adjusting it to allow for more time because we want to make like able to like actually be really present or they ask questions and all that stuff. It's starting to feel a little rushed. So we are now we have a new timeline. We are going to start promoting that and being a lot more forthcoming with details. Close, like at the end, towards the end of August. So it's like towards the end of August, you're going to start seeing a lot more information, a lot more about it. And this is also going to allow for the opportunity to put up some stuff and actually allow for question and answer calls with parents and stuff. Because again, one of the big things is the parents have to trust me, or at least be willing to take the risk to, because with that risk, they're allowing these young men to create brotherhood. If nothing else, if they don't take anything else from the opportunity, these young men will get an opportunity to circle up, voice what they feel, voice their own stories, help to decide their own moral code, and share that amongst peers without judgment. And then know that as they move forward, they might never do yoga, they might never meditate, or they might at 20 pick it up because they remember some guy Mike talking about it. Either way is totally okay with me. It's the fact that at 20, when they do pick up that thing, if they ever do, they can tell those same young men that they met all of those years before, guys, I finally tried yoga. Mike was right. It is kind of cool. And then they're like, oh damn, because they will have that connection still. And it's knowing that they're going to go the rest of their lives and they will not be alone.
And I think that's key because, like, you know, teenagers don't really have the tools. They're not given those type of tools. Let me say not given. Majority are not given those type of tools. There are some teenagers that I've met that have all these tools and are doing these things. But I think that is necessary, right? And then ultimately having that mentor, you know, like I grew up in an area where there's like the Big Brother program, right? So like having that mentor to be able to call when they're at home and maybe they got in an argument with their dad, or they got in an argument with their sister, or maybe a best friend, or whatever the case may be, but saying, hey Mike, this is what I'm feeling, can you just hear me out? Like I don't feel like I can voice my opinion the right way or articulate what I'm feeling, and then just having that.
Yeah, and they'll even have, so they'd have that, and they'll also have their brothers in that scenario. So in there, it's like, oh man, like this is, and it's not, oh, I have to go talk to an adult about this. It's like, guys, I just fought with my dad because he's not respecting me on this, and they're like, and the brothers would be like, cool, like, so where did you overstep? Call him forward. Be like, hey, so how did you react? Did you respond? Did you take a breath? Did you see his perspective? You're gonna have another teenager getting to practice what he's been hearing, practice what he's been preaching, and then hear it back to him. Know that someone else is struggling with the same thing. So when the next time when he fights with his dad, it's like, okay, well, what was that advice I gave Mark? What was that advice I gave Greg? What, Jason, whatever. Like, what was that advice I just gave him? Oh, that's right. Like, dad's getting fired up. Well, did dad have a long day at work? Am I trying to push an issue that I could just talk to him about? Am I fighting him right now? Like, why am I fighting? Oh, hey, there's something I really want to talk to you guys about. This doesn't seem like the right time. Can we set up a next time tomorrow? Imagine what the parents are going to do if the teenager just goes, hey, this is not, we're not seeing eye to eye right now. So how about can we talk about this tomorrow? Just complete de-escalation. Because he learned it by talking, like knowing that his brothers are going to have his back and say, yeah, hell yeah, way to de-escalate and all that stuff.
Building that emotional intelligence at a young age.
Yeah.
Take me all the way back, right? I'm going to ask you a question that I just generalize on all the podcasts. If you could take yourself back as 35-year-old Mike, right? And you can give advice to either 17 or 18-year-old Mike, or just anybody that's in this position right now. If you could give advice to anyone, what would it be in that scenario?
Advice to listening to Dewey Freeman and Mark Sylvester talking about it all the time. Like, would you even listen to yourself? So advice to back then me is just to keep putting a seed in the back of his head that the pain's worth it. And so then if I was to now tell that to just to these young men that I'm going to be talking to now, is let them know that these trials, these pain, these moments, they'll turn into gifts if you allow them to not define you, and if you allow yourself to be able to move past them. So you can control the spiral, and these in their world right now, there's a lot that they can't control. So absorb, learn, listen, and prepare yourself for the moment that you do get to have that driving wheel and you get to have that steering wheel and you are adults, you know, you get to use that information instead of it being one of those things that you're behind the eight ball because of all the things that happen to you.
That landed well for me, and I truly appreciate that. Lastly, my last question, give you the floor. I'm going to give you the floor here, 2 to 3 minutes. You can rap about anything and then just close with how people can connect with you and get a hold of you.
Okay. Well, if I got 2 to 3 minutes, I'm starting with gratitude. I appreciate you. I appreciate this opportunity and this platform to speak to. I know you talked to a lot of vets, and I know you talked to a lot of parents. So I really appreciate the opportunity. This is not about me. Everything from the course to my goal to my purpose is to create such a place that the boys change the world. And that being said, although I am currently the lightning rod that's seeing it through, it's not a program that requires me to be there every step of the way for them. We're going to be incorporating other opportunities for their mentors. We are doubling down on in person, and this is all future dreams. In-person work and doubling down on creating more and more a larger brotherhood for teens. And the understanding is these are your brothers, and the world will change by knowing that you're not alone. And so as you make every decision, you'll make a decision not only for what helps you in the short term, what provides towards that purpose, that future, as you figure it out, because you'll have someone having you back. So the idea is you will walk this path, you will walk life knowing that you are not alone. Now, as far as where to find me, I was challenged a while back, and now I've just kept doing it. I'm on Instagram, Mike's Perspectives, and it's basically a pun on words for Mike's Perspective. And then I also am in the nation. I'm very active in the nation. So any nation members that hear this, by all means, it's Mike at Man Uncivilized. If you have questions, Mike at manuncivilized.com. If you have questions and concerns, if you're a parent and you want to shoot through this, I love. And if you're even just as a man or a woman that hears this and is like, man, how did you change your life in that way? I am not your coach. I know some amazing people who could, guide you. I'm not a guru, although I will 100% share what worked for me. In this world, the best thing I can do is share you what I've seen, what I have experienced, and then let you run with it. So I have a lot of tools and a lot of books that I've gone through and a lot of great men and women that I've met through this path, and I'd be happy to introduce them. So just the connection part is the key part.
Once again, Mike, I really appreciate your time today, and thank you for jumping on.
Yeah. I love, you were one of my favorite test cases. Don't tell everybody else. I love watching from like, bro, my life's going, the military's kicking me out, me and the wife aren't doing good, the kids are going nuts, the business is going this way. And I'm like, all right, so like, is it, do you need like an asteroid to hit the car or like a house to catch the car? What do you like, what's left, bro? And you're like, what do you mean? I'm like, look, like the universe is like, hey, and you're like, oh. And then you went from there to switching your leadership, like bringing your leadership, bringing what makes you so amazingly, which is your honesty and your leadership and your just joy of life, and turned it towards your family where where it needed it most, and towards your own life, not just the military. And since then, have revolutionized your life. So oh, man, I love watching you grow. I love how much it's changed, and I love seeing where it's going.
I appreciate that. My wife and I, we were on a walk. We're in Colorado. You know this, but the people that haven't been following us close, we're in Boulder, Colorado right now. We're on a hike yesterday, and my wife looks at me and she says, "This it's crazy. You were making 90,000 a year, right? You had all this security, and you get out, you're not making much. We're just going by it, and I love you even more." And I just started laughing. I'm like, well, I guess that's a good thing because usually like the women run when you don't when you're not making
Yeah.
the money.
Well, and you know what? And that's the thing. You were literally, even in that little tidbit right there, you're destroying a paradigm. Guys are like, oh man, I have to make X amount of money in order to find love, in order to be qualified for love. And you're like, actually, you just have to show up.
Absolutely.
Like, you got to show up and let the money work itself out by you putting the effort into it, by choosing first what's your priorities, and then working the other way around, instead of like, oh, gotta get the house, gotta get the job, and being all alone. So man, I
Yeah,
love it, and I'm glad it's working for you.
I truly appreciate it, brother, and I know that we'll probably jump on and again and talk about a different topic because I know this what we were just talking about. We could talk about masculine leadership. We could talk about a lot of things.
Oh,
So, um,
it could be a
I
mini series, man. I'm for it.
let's do it. Love you, brother. Talk to you soon.